Hi there, I'm Amelia, I'm from EVCOM. Welcome to our first Skillshare session of day 2 of the Big Skillshare initiative. If you missed any of yesterday's session, don't worry, you can catch them all up via our IGTV and they're also available on our website. And today we are really lucky, we're going to be joined by Tony Evans from EGI Live, and he's going to be talking to us about strategic events in the current climate. So let me just, there we go. Tony there now. So Tony founded EGI Live Communication in 1996 to advise and support leadership teams as they drive engagement and the progressive behaviours that deliver strategy in world-class companies by helping them to create the space and time for the conversations that matter. Hi Tony, how are you? Oh, is he? Hopefully he'll join soon. So yeah, they've been working with companies such as Pernod-Ricard, Deloitte, GE, BP, Amadeus and Novartis across Europe, Asia, Africa and North America. So globally around the world on strategic events. And he's passionate about the value of engagement and is a former chair of the Guru Group within the Engaged for Success movement and also a fellow of the Royal Society for the Encouragement of Arts, Manufacture and Commerce. So yeah, we're very, very lucky to have him here. Let me just see if I can add him myself. It's the joy of technology. This is our second Instagram Live. Hi there.
Amelia, hi, hello. Sorry about that. I think we had a little technical glitch. But,
we're all learning, aren't we?
Indeed we are. Yes, thank you. Well, look, thank you for inviting me to join you. It's a pleasure on one of my favourite subjects, really.
Well, yeah, I'm very excited to hear all your thoughts on strategic events, and I've got some questions prepared. So I guess, yeah, I just wanted to start at the beginning. And so, you know, what exactly do we mean when we talk about strategic events? And why choose to put one on? What are the benefits of strategic events specifically?
Yeah, hey, look, that's a good question to start with, for sure. And I think strategic events probably mean slightly different things to different people. But in essence, I think a large number of events are fundamentally strategic. I think we can get a little bit nervous when the label strategic goes on top of it, and somehow there's this sort of dark, mysterious box in there that we've got to come up with some magical answers. But for me, the great strategic events, they might touch on strategy, but fundamentally, it's about exploring this journey that an organization or even a community is on. So where they're going from and where to. And in essence, that's what a strategy is. It's about our desire to get somewhere that is better. And a strategic event, therefore, is often an opportunity to check in with how we're getting along on that journey. But often, just as importantly, to get an alignment. And that alignment can be around our commitment to the journey, to the direction that we're going in, an alignment that we're all feeling that we're pretty much in the same place, but also an opportunity to see around us the power and the potential of the people that make up the community that we're in, the organization that we're in. So I think they serve these two purposes, setting our direction and ensuring that we're all moving towards that. And, you know, at the moment, strategic events are really important, but they're also really difficult to be doing. And I think that's a great conundrum that a lot of us are facing at the moment.
Yeah, completely. That actually leads me nicely onto my next question, which is about specifically strategic events right now in this current climate, particularly in the context of, you know, a lot of people's long-term strategy is constantly changing as this new normal is constantly changing. So how can you create strategic events when that strategy is constantly changing?
Yeah, I think it's a real challenge. And I think if you look at a strategic event where you've got to go out with a set of instructions as leaders and tell everybody what they've got to do, then I think that's a real challenge at the moment. I think, however, and I think more enlightened and more distributed leadership is thinking the other way around, that actually the solutions are within the community of people that we have around us. Then a strategic event is a great opportunity to discover that, to discover the talents, to create the unexpected interactions where innovation, where change, where progress might exist, and to use that energy to be able to make some progress going further forward. but I think there's two things that are probably some energy around both of those things. One is at a human level. I've talked there very positively about the value of bringing people together, but of course, in the current circumstances, we've all been very apart, and we've all had very different journeys as we've gone through and are continue to go through this pandemic. And we know that at the other end, there's some tough, challenging conditions coming. And, and our industry, the members of EVCOM and beyond that, have felt that as much as anybody. And the great thing I think about events that are strategic, the events that bring people together, is it's also an opportunity for us to process these experiences and to share what we're going through, to make sense of these things. And also, I think for an organization, therefore, to demonstrate a level of compassion. Now, that might not be about being strategic, but actually it's at the heart of many of the companies that we work for. It's at the heart of their purpose. And at the moment, I think we're going to be judged on how we behave with people, how we interact with people, and showing compassion is hugely valuable. The challenge to that on the other side is, and we saw this in the last recession as well, is there's perhaps a reluctance to go with full commitment towards the strategy, because we're sort of still working it out. We actually, as somebody said on a webinar last week, we're still in the eye of the storm. So really trying to make sense of it. We could make some bad calls. We could. So I think at the moment we're trying to be patient and compassionate. And if we can find those two things, then there's no reason why we can't be at the moment bringing people together. Other than obviously physically we can't bring them together, so we're going to have to think about other ways of doing it.
Completely. So yeah, patience and compassion, those are good things to bring together.
Absolutely. And trying to retain some confidence in all of that. That there's certain things that we can't control. That there are a lot of things that are much bigger than us. But I think in the moment and in the present, we can take some confidence. The certainty there, if nothing else.
Completely. You talked about the difficulty of bringing people together right now, and I know there's a lot of conversation at the moment in events about the possibilities of virtual and hybrid, etc. What do you think the impact of that is going to be in strategic event space? How do you think we can use virtual in that space?
So I think it's really exciting, and I think the first thing is to looking across our sector, what an amazing response there has been to be able to adapt and adjust the sorts of events that were maybe planned, or indeed the communications that have been so vital to ensure that people are able to adapt to working from home and still feeling part of these large and often global organizations. So I think we've done that incredibly well, and the technology has stood up really well to that, and the skill set of our community has delivered against that. I think our challenge is to take it to the next stage, and it's something that we're looking very carefully at the moment. Our aim is to create the space and time for people to have these conversations, to have these interactions, and we're looking at how we might structure that almost through the eyes of an architect, to be able to help people have meaningful conversations. I think that's a really challenging thing to do online, but there are methodologies that we can bring to the party, and we can start with small conversations, human conversations, the one-on-ones. Maybe it goes to a 2-on-2, and we start to create convection around strategy and around purpose, rather than perhaps the cascade which we're going at the moment, which is all about projecting certainty, and rightfully so. So I think there's a step to go through. There's an exciting next step to go through, and I don't think that means it's the end of live events, but I think we're all struggling to know when they might come back. But I think the hybrid model is something that we can certainly look to, and of course there's real benefits there to the carbon footprint. That's actually gone up the agenda, and whilst we've pressed this large pause button, something that is becoming very real for many of our clients. And in either of those environments, obviously a lot of our members deliver content and communications, and for them I think they're showing already some great adaptability, and I think that plays into that whole hybrid space. So I think our sector can become more important, and it's up to us really collectively to sort of grasp that nettle and get to the top table in our organization, in our clients' organizations.
Completely, yeah. It's a really potentially a really exciting moment for virtual and for sustainability, as you said.
Absolutely.
And so, yeah, sort of what makes a really, any tips on what makes a really great strategic event? You know, what brings out the best in strategic events? You know, where would you go with it?
So again, I think there's a huge spectrum here, but for me, I was reflecting on this, obviously knowing we were having this conversation, and I think ultimately it's about what difference do you want to make? What's the change? And a lot of the work that we do is around internal communities, leadership communities, and maybe sometimes partners and strategic partners with these organizations. And I think that the measures that we're often looking for are to try and move engagement, move confidence in strategy, understanding in strategy. Importantly, making people feel that it's relevant to them, that actually what we do on a day-to-day basis, you know, we're not going into a meeting and saying, can you tell me what the strategy is? There's not a test for getting it word for word. But actually, if you can tell stories about what you're doing and feel and know that actually that is aligned with the greater good, with the strategy, then you're going to end up with a community which is a whole that is greater than the sum of its parts. And to get to that, for me, the greatest strategic events have often been really simple, but they've had a lot of space in the agenda for people to be asked questions, for people to tell stories, and for people to listen. And if nothing else, I would say put white space into your agenda and into your environment to create that space for people to express themselves and for us to find those interactions where we've got common ground. And often, sort of referencing to Richard's talk yesterday on creativity, where these unexpected interactions and great creativity can come out as well.
Completely. You told me a lovely anecdote on the phone earlier, about a Dutch architect. Would you be able to share that with us?
Yeah, I'd be delighted to. Yeah, it's and something I only heard recently. I'm going to reference Richard again and thank him for his top tips. And the third one is steal but don't cannibalize. So so that's exactly what I'm doing, but not all three. I'm just going to take the third one. And I was watching a webinar yesterday, and it was talking about the recovery and how we respond, how, if you like, we can springboard on forwards. And I had the pleasure of listening to a Dutch architect. I think the organization is called AKKA, A-K-K-A. And she told this fantastic story about the design of a learning institution. And the architects had identified maybe the key three faculties, and they'd laid them out, and they knew where they needed to be. But what they didn't do was to put any paths or roadways in between the two. They literally just put grass everywhere. And they left it for a year, its first year of use, and waited to see where the paths started to naturally emerge. And that told them where the flow of people were, and indeed where they were crisscrossing. And I thought that was quite magical, and also quite confidence. But that for me is about leaving that space, because people have got just a natural way of telling you what they need and working out where the connections and interactions go. And there was two elements that they mentioned there, and I think this plays into the design of strategic or any event indeed where you've got interaction. But this was the references they had for this particular design was leave it incomplete and leave it imperfect. And I think we have got a habit of rushing towards having everything perfect, especially as event designers and event organizers. You know, we want that predictability, we want that certainty, but actually the uncertainty is often where the magic appears. And so leave it incomplete and leave it imperfect, and trust the people who are there to fill in the gaps and to craft it in the shape that they would craft it. And that's the right shape.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much. I think that brings us to a close, unless there's anything else you'd like to add.
Hey, look, it's a pleasure. I think we could chat for a lot longer, but it's straight after lunch, so people might be dropping off. But no, I think that's it. I think if I was to leave you with anything, it would be to think when you're designing these meetings about how you can create the space and the time for people to have conversations. You know, change takes place in the conversation is quite a famous quote. And if you're creating an environment that allows people to do that and showing them that trust, then you'll be amazed by what can come out of it and what progress you can make. And also good luck to everybody who's doing this. This is definitely a tough journey that we're all on. But, you know, I invite people to just be innovative, look at what their strengths are, and think about how they can be relevant to what they're doing and what they're doing for their clients going forward.
Well, thank you so much, Tony. That was fascinating. I feel like I've learned a lot, and I'm sure the people listening do too. And so this will be on our IGTV as well afterwards, and on our website. But yeah, please do check out what Tony does for more wonderful wisdom on strategic events. And thank you so much for joining us, Tony.
Thanks, Amelia. Thanks, everybody. Cheerio.